So I really wanted my next video to be a proper lore video, since I've still got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm probably never going to catch up at this rate. But I couldn't not talk about this. See, I noticed some things dropped on us in 5.3, which is, as of this video, the current patch, though this video is probably going to go up the day before 5.4 drops, and I made some tenuous connections that have serious implications about a certain founder of the Path of the 12 and the antecedent of the Scions of the 7th Dawn. You guys have already read the title. Today we're going to be talking about Minfilia, and how she may possibly actually be a Primal. I know, I did the whole April Fool's thing about how Gobbert's a Primal, and that was a total joke, but this time, I'm serious. I mean, come on, it's not even April. Just clarifying that in case you thought this was another one of my joke videos. In order to understand how Minfilia might be a Primal, we need to understand a few things about Elidibus. Now, this is going to make absolutely no sense right now, but trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. See, Elidibus was originally a member of the Convocation of 14. The Amorites, the Amaricians? I'm gonna go with Amaricians. The Ancients' Government Council. When the Reckoning started wreaking havoc on the entire star, Emet-Selch and the other Convocation members devised a plan to use their summoning magic to call forth the will of the planet itself, so that it may put an end to the disaster and save them. Unfortunately, this would require an incredible amount of sacrifice. For starters, 50% of the population had to be sacrificed just to summon Zodiark, and then they'd later need another 50% of those who remained to sacrifice themselves so Zodiark had the power to stave off the corruption of their world. Also, while summoning Zodiark, they needed someone to sacrifice themselves to become Zodiark's heart. I imagine this is kind of similar to the practice of channeling a primal into your own body, just on a much, much larger scale, and seemingly more permanent. Because Elidibus was the youngest of the Convocation, and because he idolized them and their ideals, he volunteered to sacrifice himself to become the Heart of Zodiark, which was confirmed to have succeeded, as it is brought up in the past tense during the recording found at the end of Academia Enidir. However, at some point in time, Elidibus was once again separated from Zodiark, and brought back into existence due to the discourse between the Convocation. As a mediator, it was his role to settle disputes, and seeing as the consequences of Zodiark's summoning sparked a pretty big one, he felt he was needed. However, he never got to resolve the issue. Azem deserted the Convocation sometime either before or shortly after Zodiark's summoning, and a rebel group of Amaricians rose up to oppose the insane amounts of sacrifice Zodiark had caused and would further require. In the end, an opposing entity, Hydaelyn, would be summoned, and the world and its people would be split in an event known as the Great Sundering. Only 2 people would survive this, Lahabrea and Emet-Selch. Elidibus also survived, but I'm not entirely sure he fully counts, since he was already a Primal at this point. Now, the important part to note here is that, despite Elidibus having sacrificed himself to become Zodiark's heart, Elidibus was able to emerge from Zodiark and exist as a Primal. Now, since Zodiark and Hydaelyn were summoned in similar ways, and both required an Amarician to sacrifice themselves to become their heart, it's possible that Venat, the Amarician who became Hydaelyn's heart, is also still able to exist outside of Hydaelyn herself, as a Primal. But then the question remains, what does Venat possibly still existing as a Primal have to do with Minfilia? And the answer is everything. My theory is that Minfilia is the current manifestation of Venat, the heart of Hydaelyn, and thus is a Primal in the same way that Elidibus is. Okay, but that's crazy, right? I mean, there's no way Minfilia is actually Venat. Except there is, and they've actually already dropped hints at it. You see, Venat, Minfilia, and Reen all share an animation. The only animation we see all 3 of them perform. This head tilt with their hand over their chest. Now, you could argue that one animation isn't a strong connection, and even if it's supposed to be a nod to anything, it could just be a nod to all 3 of them having a strong connection to Hydaelyn. But I would argue that it's meant to imply a deeper connection. First of all, let's look at Venat's following. These are the rebel Amaricians I mentioned before. Notice how there's 12 of them. Now, I've seen theories on these guys ranging from this group eventually becomes the Archons, to them possibly being the original 12 deities, or both if you buy into the theory that the Archons are manifestations of the 12, which I also did a theory video on. But the important part here is the number. First, the organization Minfilia was the leader of was called the Path of the 12. Obviously, this number didn't really reflect the number of people in the organization, but instead the 12 deities, but it's still interesting, and with the possibility that these are in some form the 12 deities, then it might even be a stronger connection, though that's a theory within a theory, and I'm not about to use that as strong evidence for my point. Also, pay attention to the number of Scions who play an integral role in the story and or have a meaningful connection to Minfilia. There's Alphino, Alize, Urianger, Thancred, Y'shtola, Ida, Papalymo, Cryo, Moonbreeda, Tataru, Philamen, and the Warrior of Light. That's 12 right there. And I would say these are the core members of the Scions, or at the very least, the ones who interact with Minfilia the most. Still, at best, this just outlines an interesting connection between them, a tenuous one at that, and even if there are interesting parallels between Minfilia and Venat, there's no way they're the same person. I mean, Elidibus is centuries old and is an Ascian, so even if Venat was still out there somewhere, they'd be an unaging soul. We know Minfilia grew up, she has an adoptive mother, and Thancred mentions watching her grow from a young girl to a woman. She can't be Venat, right? Well, maybe, but also maybe not. I mean, we know Ascians have the power to disguise themselves as humans and possess bodies. Solus Sos Galvus was Emet-Selch in all but name, and he specifically died from failing health and old age, so we know Ascians can and do age when possessing a body. Furthermore, Venat literally says, "I shall not vanish from this world. The form I take shall ever remain my choice," implying that, even after sacrificing themselves to become Hydaelyn's heart, they can still choose their physical appearance. Also, interestingly enough, we don't really ever get to hear about Minfilia's biological mother. The game and lore books mentioned her father died when she was young, but we don't hear anything about who her mother was, or if she even existed. Considering her father also died when she was young, it seems odd they'd include him but never once mention when or how Minfilia's mother died. But what if that's just it? What if Minfilia never had a true mother? What if Minfilia's father was also an adoptive father? That he found her somewhere as a child and raised her until his death? However, I think the biggest evidence for Minfilia being Venat is her role after A Realm Reborn story. See, during the end of the post-A Realm Reborn main story quests, after the Warrior of Light was framed for the Sultana's murder and the Scions are fleeing through the aqueducts, Hydaelyn calls out to Minfilia directly and Minfilia stays behind, insisting that the Warrior of Light go on without her. Later we find out that she offered herself up to Hydaelyn. But here's the thing. Why? Minfilia had the Echo, sure, but so did a bunch of other people. Sure, Minfilia was more in tune with Hydaelyn's wishes, but I'm sure there were other devout followers of the Mother Crystal, ones not running important organizations that defend the realm. I mean, presumably the reason why Hydaelyn didn't just ask the Warrior of Light to give themselves up for her was because she needed them to fight to protect the realm. But couldn't the same be said for Minfilia? She was basically running the Scions at the time. But what if Hydaelyn didn't have a choice? I mean, if Minfilia was actually Venat, and therefore Hydaelyn's heart, then calling her back might have been out of necessity. I mean, even Minfilia seems distraught at the idea. When Hydaelyn is speaking to her, her first response is a horrified no. Perhaps Hydaelyn had lost so much of her power that she could no longer sustain herself without Venat, and so Minfilia had to return to her. This is even backed up by what Minfilia says when we meet her during the conflict with the Warriors of Darkness in Heaven's Word's post-expansion MSQ.
But for the boon you have granted her, she has grown strong enough to set me free, that I might serve as her emissary.
Set her free? Like she was trapped in Hydaelyn, and Hydaelyn didn't have the power to sustain Minfilia outside of her until we in the Warriors of Darkness offered her the power of all our Crystals of Light. Also, notice what she calls herself. Hydaelyn's emissary. That is the exact role Elidibus served when he was a member of the Convocation, and he mentions leaving Zodiark to once again fulfill that role when the Convocation and the Amaricians as a whole started fighting amongst themselves. This line could very well be hinting at her true nature. She emerged from Hydaelyn to become her emissary long ago, and rather than sacrificing herself to Hydaelyn, she was simply called back. This would explain a lot of things about Minfilia that were never quite really explained, and never quite made sense to me. For starters, her connection to Hydaelyn and her understanding of the Echo. Other people also possess the Echo, but Minfilia seems to be particularly well versed in its use, and always seems particularly in tune with Hydaelyn's wishes. Also, she's referred to as the Antecedent, which means predecessor. Since this is a carryover title from her days as the leader of the Path of the 12, we can assume that this has something to do with the Echo. However, it's not like she was the first person to ever awaken the Echo or understand its secrets. But perhaps she was a predecessor to those with the Echo, by virtue of existing before the Great Sundering. Also, back in 1.0, she was referred to as the acting antecedent of the Path of the 12, an organization she founded and was the leader of. But acting antecedent kind of seems to imply she was waiting for someone else to take her place. And perhaps she was. Perhaps, like with Venat and Azem, she was waiting for the Warrior of Light to come and side with them and take up a leadership role. But when that seemed less and less likely, she stepped up to become its leader proper, and dropped the acting part of the title. Or it's the implication that she was merely acting in place of Hydaelyn as Hydaelyn's will, which, once again, is a similar role to what Elidibus was doing for Zodiark. Now, if this is true, I do want to say that I don't think Minfilia was ever fully aware of the truth behind her nature while growing up, and may never have become aware of it up until that moment we see Hydaelyn speaking to her right before she gives herself up to Hydaelyn. We do see Elidibus struggling with his memories of the past, and Zodiark is supposed to be much stronger than Hydaelyn, so I can see Venat's memories having completely left them by this point, with only the vaguest understanding of a purpose, to follow in Hydaelyn's path and act as her voice. I definitely think she must have been made aware of it at the end of A Realm Reborn, at the latest, because of her reaction, and because of what she says to the Warrior of Light afterwards. Also, her dialogue during her appearance in 3.4 definitely hints at a deeper connection between her and Hydaelyn, so I have to assume that at that point she was at least fully aware of her role as Hydaelyn's heart, if not her past and her true nature. Like I said though, this is all just a theory, but I do think this one holds a lot of weight. It certainly has a lot more evidence going for it than my last theory video about the Archons being the 12. That was more of a throwaway line, whereas this is more of a deeper connection that's been hinted at and might be revealed later in the story. Or not, I could be way off base with this one, who knows? Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really wanted to get this one out there before 5.4, in case the story there either completely confirms or debunks this one, because I did have a lot of fun putting the pieces together here with stuff we've already seen. I'll try to get my next lore video out soon, I promise, but after that, my next discussion video is probably going to take me a while. I have something big planned that I've mentioned a bit before in comments and on stream, but I do want to give it the proper amount of time and research. In the meantime, I do stream on Tuesdays and Saturdays at 9 PM EST. I mostly stream Final Fantasy XIV, and I've been raiding a bunch lately trying to get last minute clears before the new raid tier. And once 5.4 drops, I'll be doing another live playthrough of the story there. The link to my Twitch channel is down in the description, so do be sure to check me out. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or your own theories, feel free to drop them down below. If you enjoyed, be sure to give the video a like, and subscribe if you want more Final Fantasy XIV lore and theories from me. Once again, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.